Kubernetes Service. We can't access pods deployed in the cluster directly from outside. So why we can't access pods directly from outside, we'll see in this section. For instance, if app clients can talk to pods directly from outside cluster, there might be a case when pod crashes, Kubernetes cluster going to create or replace a new pod. In such cases, app client needs to get the pod IP dynamically in order to interact with the new pod created by the cluster. It's very difficult to app clients to keep track of the pod IPs. The solution to this problem is to have service in place. The clients are exposed with service object and service routes traffic to the pod. In Kubernetes cluster, pods can be terminated at any point of time and replaced with new ones on same node or different node depending on the scheduling algorithm. But service objects are static. Once created, they stick to the cluster. They never die in the cluster. That way, client do not have to keep track of dynamically changing pod IPs. Services provides seamless integration between app clients and pods. That's one use case of service. In production environments, same type of pod, probably you need multiple replicas. In such cases, services will also act like a load balancer. If any pod crashes, the cluster will take care of creating a new pod which comes up with new IP. New pods created automatically joins the service. What is the mechanism for tying up pods with service? Labels play a key role. If you guys remember, when we deployed a pod, it has labels. This plays a key role in tying up pods with services. Service objects will have a selector. It selects all pods matching specific label. I am showing the YAML file of service and pod side by side. Service has a selector. It's going to select pods with a specific label. In this case, service will tie all pods having this matching label with help of selectors. In the cluster, there can be one pod or multiple pods with matching label. We will see multiple replica scenarios while talking replica sets and replica controllers. Okay, it's time to deploy service object into a Kubernetes cluster. Let's go through service YAML file. Every resource in Kubernetes has a kind, the kind of object. Earlier we had kind pod, this time we have kind service. We do have API version, metadata, and the metadata we have name, the name of the service, spec, selector, app, node app, the label key is app, the value is node app. Service is going to find all pods in the cluster with this matching label and it starts routing traffic to them when anybody hit the service. Then comes ports. The protocol is TCP. Port 80, we are saying that this service listens on 80. Anybody want to access this service, they should use the IP address of this service and port 80. Target port is 8080, meaning the pods, otherwise the containers running in the pod is exposed with 8080. Any traffic coming to this service will route the traffic to the pods on 8080. The type of service is node port. We will discuss more about different types of services in a separate video. Let's go ahead and create this service and see how to access them. Let's get to my GitHub Kubernetes repository, open services, and open this YAML file. Hit on draw, copy that link, download that file using wget. We got that file to our local machine. Let's use kubectl, create, and the file containing details about our service. The request submitted to Kubernetes cluster. Kubectl get SVC is a shortcut to get all services. You could find my service with age 21 seconds. The IP address of that service is 10.101, 47 and 46. Now I want to hit this service from outside the cluster. Right now I am on my host. To access this service outside the cluster, I need to get node IP. Using minikube IP, we'll get the IP address of the VM on which minikube cluster is running. Take minikube IP, use command line URL tool. So hit the cluster using node IP and node port. You could see the response coming from the pod which is deployed in Kubernetes cluster. So I want to explain you little more about the ports. 80 is a port, 32285 is a port. If you go and check service file, it also has some target ports. So what all these ports are? So port is the one which is used by clients within the cluster to access this service. So target port, when a request comes to service, it hits the pod on a target port 8080. So this port is called as node port. In a cluster, if you have 10 nodes, you can hit any node on this port. It will route traffic to the service. Then how this 80 works? As I said, 80 is used within the cluster. First, let's get into the cluster using minikube SSH. Now I am inside the cluster. I want to use curl. Let's grab IP address of service, and I am not using node port because I am hitting my service within the cluster. You could see a response coming back from that service. To reiterate, 80 is the port on which service listens on. That works only within the cluster. So 32285 is the node port. Every node in the cluster is opened with this port. If you hit any node on this port, it is routed to the service. And target port is nothing but the port on which the pods, otherwise the containers in the pods, are running.